I'll give you a heads up before we get started. This brew day, while not a total disaster, was less than my expectations. So stay tuned for an announcement at the end of the video. Hey folks, I noticed that the kegs in my keezer are getting kind of light. There's still some left in the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale Clone keg, which by the way turned out pretty nice. I don't know how exactly close it is to Bell's Two-Hearted Ale. I didn't do a side-by-side, but it's a pretty darn good IPA. And as far as the Imperial Stout, that is getting real light. I'm expecting that keg to kick any pour now, maybe even the next pour. So it's time to make some more beer. Today's November 7th, and even though I like dark beers, porters, and stouts all year long, it's really time to start stocking up on dark beers. So today I'm going to go back to an old favorite. If you remember the 1880 Whitbread Porter that I made a long time ago, you can look in the previous videos. I'm going to make that again. And now I'm up to at least version 3 of this porter, and I've tweaked it a little bit each time, so I don't even know if I can call it an 1880 Whitbread Porter as published by Ron Pattinson on his blog, Shut Up About Barclay Perkins. So I'm probably after this just going to start calling it my Gable Road Porter. Maybe Gable Road Vintage Porter or something like that. Anyway, let's get going. It's Brew Day! Here's a tip from your old Uncle Kevin. Before you start grinding the grain, take the lid off the bucket underneath. All right, so I've reached my strike temperature of 167 degrees. I'm mashing fairly high today, 156, which is one of the changes I've made to this recipe over time. And the grain bill is 11 pounds of Maris Otter, 1 pound 12 ounces of brown malt. However, my brown malt came packaged in a 2-pound bag, so I just threw in the extra 4 ounces. And the other grain is black malt, and that is 1 pound. Hey Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes and counting.
Now the mash temperature is not the only change I've made to this recipe, which came, by the way, from Ron Pattinson and this book, The Homebrewer's Guide to Vintage Beer. If you're interested in that kind of thing, pick this up. Follow Ron Pattinson on his blog, Shut Up About Barclay Perkins. This was originally the 1880 Whitbread Porter recipe. And my grain bill is exactly the same as this. Pale malt, brown malt, black malt. I've tweaked the numbers a little bit, the ratios. But it also has 3 different kinds of hops. Fuggles, cluster, and spalter. Now you may be saying, American and German hops in an English beer? No way, you're off your nut. Well, no, the English loved German hops, and they used it a lot. They also used a lot of American hops. Now, it might not have said cluster in the brew log, but it said American. And it's a pretty safe bet that at this time, that American hop was probably cluster. So, my recipe uses Goldings for bittering and Fuggles for flavoring. And I've changed the mash temperature. I'm using a different yeast. So you see, I've tweaked this enough times over the different variations that I've made that I'm probably not going to call this 1880 Whitbread Porter anymore. I'm going to call it Gable Road Vintage Porter. Gable Road for my little garage brewery, and vintage to indicate that it's of historical origin. So, let's get the mash underway. I started my mash timer, 60 minutes. Walked away, went in the house. Started doing some other stuff here, cleaning up a little. Came back out after 50 minutes. Mash almost done. And what do I discover? My temperature has fallen down to 150 or a little lower. What happened? I forgot to open a valve. So the mash has not been recirculating through the Herms coil. Therefore, it's not been maintaining temperature. And the temperature has just been falling this whole time. So, I opened the valve, everything is circulating the way it's supposed to. I'm going to reset the timer and probably continue mashing for another 60 minutes. Long mash isn't going to hurt anything. I'm going to get beer. That's the bottom line. Will it be what I intended? Maybe, maybe not. Who cares? We're going to get beer. All right, so I have mashed basically for a second time. Just about done with my second hour, 1:34. Hey Siri, cancel my timer.
I stopped the timer.
Good job. Now I'm going to start setting up for my fly sparge. If you haven't watched me fly sparge before, and you're not familiar with the process, I've got just plain hot water in this tank. This is the hot liquor tank. And I'm pumping it from the bottom valve into the pump, out of the pump, and into the top of the mash tun. Very slow trickle, just trickling hot water through the grain bed. Where it exits down here, goes into this pump. The pump pumps it into the boil kettle, and again, it's just a very slow flow. We're just moving water slowly, hopefully at the same slow rate, from here to here to here. And that way you extract as much of the sugar content from these mashed grains as possible. All right, I didn't take a pre-boil gravity reading. The boil had already started. I put my chiller, immersion chiller, in the boil kettle right away, or at the very beginning, as I was filling it. So when I reached the boil, whatever leftover liquid was in the chiller started boiling out the ends. So I had to real quick put one of the hoses on, and I can't find a connection for this one. So it was kind of a Chinese fire drill for a little bit until I got everything calmed down. So I've already been boiling 15, 20 minutes maybe a little bit longer. So this is not really a pre-boil gravity. But it will give me an idea if I'm in my ballpark or not. I already added my first addition of hops, 2 ounces of East Kent Goldings. I did that during the Chinese fire drill. So I'm not expecting my gravity to be close to my pre-boil expectations. It should be higher, and I'm at 1058 right now. 1058, 1059 is supposed to be my final gravity. So this is going to be a little stronger beer. I think it's because of the double mashing I did. That little mistake there. Maybe it's an indication of how I should do higher gravity beers in the future. So that's okay. I like a robust porter, don't you? All right, my timer just went off. 15 minutes left in the boil, and it's time for my Whirflock additions. Just going to plop those in there, reset my timer. It's already going. 5 more minutes, and then it's time for my 10-minute hop addition. 5 minutes after that, it's time for my yeast nutrient. It's a lot to keep up with. Good thing I got a timer going. And I am about to go full-blown MacGyver on something. The one thing I don't have with my immersion chiller is a temperature to know how far down I've chilled. So I took this thermometer that was on my counterflow chiller, and I rummaged through my parts box, and I found this cam lock adapter. So I've attached a short piece of hose, silicone tubing, on here already, and I'm going to put the other end. I need to unscrew this on here. Now, get it good and tight. Don't want any leaks. Now, I can put this into my kettle, and this out of the kettle into the pump, and then from the pump into the whirlpool arm, and I can check my temperature. Cross your fingers and hope it works. Well, I hope it works. All right. Yes. 5 more minutes in, 5 minutes left, and it's time for my final addition of hops. 1 ounce of Fuggle. These are 4.4% alpha acids. Excuse me, 10 minutes left in the boil. I have one more ingredient to add in 5 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, now, shut up. Timer. Last ingredient to go into the boil. This is Y yeast beer nutrient blend, some yeast nutrient. I lost my, or I can't find my measuring spoons, so half a teaspoon, more or less. And 5 minutes to go, then we'll start chilling. I'll start chilling, you'll sit there and watch. All right, there's no reason to listen to that nasty alarm again, so I've turned it off. I'm going to turn the pump on and begin recycling work from the boil kettle into the whirlpool arm to get a good whirlpool going. Anyway, it's time to turn the heating element off. Boom. And I'm going to turn the water on slowly. Make sure my connections hold. And now, yeah, I got a little bit of leak right here, but that's okay. It's not leaking into the boil kettle. Have to put some more thread tape on there maybe and tighten that up. I've already gone from boiling to 200 and hot, 202. Let's see how long this takes. It's, all right, 353. Well, that's definitely not what I want. Turn this off for a sec here. Still got a little drip coming out of here. But I just put these connections on, these quick disconnects. I probably need to work on the thread tape and just tighten them down a little bit more. So, 353 is when I started. That was 2 minutes ago. And I'm already down to 160 degrees. From boiling to 160 in 2 minutes. I'm going to pour a beer. I think the Imperial Stout is about ready to kick. So let's test that. Nope. Got a good pour out of that. That's the BIB Imperial Stout. I made that, what, back in July? I forget when. Check the past videos and watch it. It's pretty good. Pretty darn good. Well, today's porter is in the fermenter. I still have to pitch the yeast. All right, as you saw, the brew day today didn't go completely to plan. And none of the mistakes were insurmountable, but I had that mash issue where I forgot to open a valve. I had the Chinese fire drill at the beginning of the boil because I got eager and turned it on too soon. Those are just juvenile mistakes. And two thoughts went running through my head during the entire brew day. One of them is I'm not paying attention. I'm just kind of on autopilot and I'm skipping over things. Also, too, I started noticing that I'm not putting the same thought and planning into these videos. I'm just kind of half-assing it, and that's not fair to you. So I've come to a decision. I'm not going to videotape anymore. I'm not going to post any more brew day videos to YouTube. I've been repeating the same things over and over lately. So I'm taking a break, and this will be the last Gable Road Homebrew 58 video for some time. I don't know when I'll get back into it, but I want to focus on the brewing itself before I start adding in videotaping again. So I've still got to add yeast to my fermenter and cap that thing off, and brew day's over.